Welcome to Recalibrate. This is a podcast of Caribou Road Christian Fellowship. Our hope is to create a moment where you get to take a look at your life through the lens of Christ's teaching and recalibrate.
Well, welcome back to Recalibrate. We're continuing today with the podcast that we started previously with Ben Woodman. If this is your first time to listen to this, we encourage you, if you have not already, go back and listen to the podcast just before this one, number 3, so that you can get the whole interview, and I'm sure it will be a blessing to you. Let's go ahead and listen to the rest of the interview. You're going to have those relationships that are life-giving to you, and that are equal. You're giving to them and they are giving to you. It's funny when you speak about eulogies, sometimes, this is a really weird thing, I've imagined who's going to be carrying my coffin.
Right.
As in those that I have impacted.
Yeah.
Not so much those who've impacted,
Yeah.
And, so there's 3 levels to that. There is the giving, thinking about intentionally investing in individuals' lives. You're not necessarily going to get anything out of it, but that's part of the call. But I think we're all realizing that probably we are going to have to be more strategic because time is not going to allow us to. And people may not feel as bad about saying no.
Right.
Because they're going to go, it's not that nothing personal. It's just that we can never go deep.
Yes. And it's scary. I think if for some personality types, it's scarier than others. Like I'm probably on the side of, that's scary. The idea of excluding anyone is so like, it just rubs me the wrong way. Like I still think about, there was like only 2 or 3 people who I didn't invite to our wedding. I invited everyone I could think of to our wedding. And there's only 2 or 3 people that I didn't invite.
Well, you just had a thing up at Malibu when you could still do it. And
yeah. And well, I mean, and I want to invite everyone and I can't. And so the idea of whittling down a list for, like a weekend away or whatever it is, a small gatherings is like my nightmare. Okay. But then there is something that's really worthwhile of going, oh, but if that's, or let me say it this way. Once you decide who the most important relationships are, then you can start to say, how am I going to invest in them this year, this month?
Yeah.
And then it starts to show up on the calendar. And if you're intentional about doing that, then you have the other space on the calendar and you don't have to be as concerned.
Let's talk about that other space. I like that. This is brilliant. I was reading an article in the BBC about another type of relationship that we have missed that we also shouldn't look over, because there is a place for these other relationships, but they're not that deep, life-giving relationship. This article by Selena Ribeiro in the BBC about how things have changed during 2020 talked about, along with some psychologists, micro interactions, that in our lives we have interactions with people. Church would be a very classic example, but it may be a gym. It may be old friends from school. They're not deep, life-giving relationships, but they are important in life to have these community groups where you laugh, banter, talk, support in some level, but not at the deep level of those other relationships. Yeah,
and what was the study finding? That there's like, are people missing that? Is there something?
It is very important for our health.
Like mental health, emotional health,
social health, emotional health. There is a place, and like we did a drive-through at Christmas time, and 2 or 3 people cried when they thought about not being able to be at church because they missed that micro interactions. Not deep. There'll be a couple of deep relationships, but just community, just ordinary conversation, just ordinary social interaction with a group of people. And I think as we go back, we're talking about, we're gonna realize that we can't have. It's not good to just be flitting around. There's going to be relationships you really want to invest in, and you come to treasure them. And like with family, you're going to make time for them. It doesn't mean though that you're going to cut out all the others as well. It's just that you recognize they have a different role in your life. There are relationships that are life-giving and essential.
Yeah.
There are relationships that it's a micro interaction. You may only have coffee with them once a year or twice a year, or meet with the group every Sunday, and be comfortable that not all these relationships are deep, but realize it's important.
I think they really are important. And I think it's one of those areas where it's so hard to quantify. Like, how do I know how much I'm missing that small interactions with people? But the small interactions with people are actually, especially for someone like myself, who's very extroverted. I love having a wide range of acquaintances and friends. And at a place like church, a lot of connection points. But those actually, even though they're small, they actually can shape our imagination of our own lives, the stories we feel like God is shaping through us and in us, but then also even the way we see the world is quite different. I don't think my extended family will be listening to this. I was kind of relieved when we did, for Christmas, when we didn't have the extended family. On Melissa's side, there's about 20 people. And so it's big enough. We do these, family gatherings, and I was kind of like, oh, why do I feel more rested at Christmas? And I was like, oh, because there's something about those gatherings where you like repeat the same conversation 5 or 6 or 7 times.
You got to work at it.
Yeah. What are you up to? Okay, so how's it been? How you doing? Some people you haven't seen in forever, and you kind of sit there and you kind of, there's always some, that uncle or someone. The dynamics of larger families is a really interesting thing. And so in this, when I think about this idea of micro interactions, it actually helps me realize from those micro interactions, I have a bigger sense of the world. My world is bigger because I'm like, oh yeah, that uncle, he thinks, he's on this side of the political spectrum and he really likes to make it known. And I know someone and I care about him, and he's on the opposite side of the political spectrum of me. And it's just small interactions where I'm like, oh, but I've seen his life, his kindness, his belief, his whatever it is, the way he lives his life with integrity. And I really disagree with him on a few areas. And it shapes out the other, I
like that.
That's one of the things that I think I really miss.
So we've got to come to a close. It's been awesome having you. We'd love to keep going. But one of the things that has been discussed a lot is when we go back, we're allowed to go back and meet together in groups, and churches are allowed to open up and meet. Everybody's saying, yes, we will be going back. But I have a suspicion there will be a number of people tempted to stay home and watch the service online. Mm-hmm. And because sometimes the quality of the service, I prefer to watch a movie at home than I do in the movie theater.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because people munch.
But you compare them like they're like a similar experience?
Well, I like the big screen if it's like a Star Wars, the big, big action. Epic, the 1917 war movie, like you got to catch it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't like the popcorn. I don't like the person on the telephone.
Right.
I don't like the noises and the distractions.
Yes.
I like home I can just relax, right?
Yeah. Are you intense? Just a curiosity, because one of the big draws for me is like immersing yourself of the theater. You know?
No, you can.
But
once you're in
you're
it,
intense. You don't pause in the middle, or do you pause?
Once I'm locked in, I'm good. It sometimes just takes me a little bit of lock in. And kind of close out everything else going on around.
Okay.
Yeah. Once I'm there, I'm good. But I think that even at church, it can be like that sometimes, Mm-hmm. Watching online, it's really easy to watch.
Yes.
Church, you've got awkward moments, people getting up, mm-hmm. somebody, the modern church is crazy. People sit there with coffee, they get up and down. A lot of people bring food to church now because they need to.
The whole thing, having, maybe there's someone you don't really want to talk to. There's some interactions you don't want to have. You have to get all ready, get dressed, get out of the house, all of it.
It is. Instead of online is an hour-long service in your pajamas, and you don't even have to watch the worship if you don't want to. And church is a 2 to 3 hour, 3 hour exercise, avoiding somebody that you potentially don't want to see.
Well, the idea, as you're saying that, and talking about this temptation to stay home, the idea in my mind is standing out of being seen. Like, one of the things I like about watching online is that I'm not seen.
Yeah. But
I think that at the core of it, one of the biggest things about relationships is you're seen, you're known. And so, it's 2 different types, right? Am I seen in my pajamas or not? That's different than am I seen at a deep level of humanity?
Yeah, I think what we're saying here is that people don't miss the value of those micro. Church can be messy. And you may feel at times it's not those intimate relationships that you're looking for. But we're built to also have micro interactions that, as you said, form us. Meeting the person that you normally wouldn't choose to meet helps shape you. And the common bond of being one in Christ means that you've got to love them and accept them. And making us who we are requires micro interactions. And you're happy to go to the gym with an eclectic group of people and meet with them. And church is just as important. And I think that's, I do think we can do a service better online in many respects, but we can't do relationship online.
No, we can't be the church better without each other, without relationships.
Even with the warts.
And yes, exactly. And it's the relationships that shape us. I mean, I don't even want to have to quantify or like measure. Is it the word, the worship, the prayer, or the relationships that shape us more in the body of Christ? Because it's like, no, but they all work together, and the Holy Spirit especially uses relationships, right? And there's, we need to be together for those, right?
I mean, there's so much to talk about, Ben. We could go on forever. I mean, like, a question that comes to my head is, I think a lot of people, when they come to church, are looking for those deep relationships that we talked about and get disappointed that church is often a micro interaction, a smaller interaction, not a deep interaction, a moment in time rather than an ongoing relationship.
One of the big things about the shaking of the pandemic for the church, it's been very big shaking for the church all over the country, all over the world, of what does this mean that we don't get to gather together, or we have to just be very small in our gatherings. It shakes us to go, oh, what's the most important things about the church, the ecclesia, the us being the people, the family of God. And my hope is that one of the things we carry out of this is an emphasis on relationships. And I think in many ways, the CRCF family has done that in a lot of great ways, helping little things along the way, serving each other, helping stay connected. I think it's really important that we all have a sense of ownership. Like when you say, when you're comparing that, we want that deep, but we don't really quite get it maybe on a Sunday in person. It's actually like we have to own a part in that, and we have to try to continue to go deep with people, but it's not just, I want to go deep with someone and jump in. It reminds me of a guy I knew. He took one of my good friends out on a date, and he was like having a conversation about, I'm really serious. I'm looking for a wife, and in the first date, right? And it was like having that conversation about marriage and future and kids, and are we the right match for each other? But almost like clinical about it. And it was like, no, you don't get to skip the customs like to that degree. So I think about it in the relationships too. You can't just come in and say, okay, I want deep relationships and try 3 times and have these weird conversations and no one wants it. No, it's like, actually, what does it look like to gradually build a deeper relationship with people, invest deep over time? And that's when it's going to be life-changing for you and other people.
You know what, time is up. We're gone way over. We're probably going to have to edit a bunch of this anyhow.
Great.
But I'd love another time to talk about the church. It's a really big question in my mind as a pastor. What is our expectation for community in church? I mean, we read the New Testament, we read the Koinonia, we read the house church. Then we have the modern church, 300-400 people in a room. 50% of them have left the building within the first 10 minutes after the service. Should we have an expectation for something more? Where does this go? What is this? That'd be a good conversation. Come into 2021 as we get a chance to reform the church heading this new year. What do we need to do? We only have a certain limited number of relationships we can maintain at a deep level. So should we be even expecting those in the church? I don't know. So that's another whole.
But some of our relationships are group relationships. Like
I think what the micro I concept is it's a group relationship.
And there's the large group setting on a Sunday gathering, but in a small group setting, it's a group relationship. And my relationship with the people in a small group is actually, it's not just a one-on-one. And this is similar in our work environments. It's a group relationship. Like we're connected as a group, and it actually still shapes us and forms us, right? So when we get different parts of a person I think C.S. Lewis wrote about it. I didn't read it, but I had a friend who told me.
You can always quote C.S. Lewis about something.
Right, exactly. But there's this idea of even like relationships, like different people bring out different characteristics. Like if you get to hang around with me and my wife, you'll see a very different side of me.
Right.
And you'll get to know me in a different way
Yeah.
because of the way I interact with my wife. Similarly, if you see me interact with my nephew, Christian, or if you see me interact with just some random server or a cashier, you get to see people differently and get to know people differently because of the relationships. Well, in small groups, there's a relationship, a group dynamic, but also on the whole, then C.S. Lewis, he does this thing where he turns it to God, right? And it's actually that we get to see God better because of the way he interacts with the people around us. So the church then is this place where we're like, I need to have tons of these small interactions. Or I need to have at least some of them because it starts to shape my imagination of how God works in the lives of his people.
It's interesting what you're saying. So what you're saying is that the large group gathering is always going to have a micro component to it because just the nature. But we've got this very intimate group of people that we're going to pour into and then we get life out of. We've got a lot of these micro interactions, both in our place of work and whatever, just kind of short conversations, that kind of community. And then there's this middle ground of a group type concept where it's not as many, there's more accountability, but your interaction is not on an individual level. It's to a group of people at the same time.
And a lot of times those can be more sustainable. I'm going to hang out with my small group.
Yeah. You can make time for that.
On Tuesday nights, 8 weeks in a row, 3 times a year or something like that. And that becomes then years. And you actually then you're years down the road and you're like, oh, these are the people I do life with. That's in a sense.
True. We found that when people do this, when they've got young children and they form a small group, young couples can have relationships that go on forever.
Oh yeah, and they do because it's a formative time of your own life when you're a new parent, and you have these people who are also in the same time. So you're in the trenches, the parenting trenches together, and you're connecting, and you remember it forever. And the words of encouragement, the prayers you pray for each other, the struggles you share, the tears maybe you shed together, and that's again, it's like I'm going to invest, but you don't have to go deep with every single person in that group.
I like that.
I'm going to journey with this group of people.
That's very good. Okay, well, listen, listeners, folks, it's been awesome. Ben, it's been
Love
awesome.
it. How do we keep in touch with you, Pastor, on the social media? Are you posting these days?
Oh, hardly ever.
Okay, well, if you want to keep in touch with me, I'm on the Instagram and the Facebook.
Oh, yeah, tell us. And so
not really
people
the
want
YouTube.
to follow you, what do they do?
Yeah, you just go on the Instagram, Ben Woodman, and you're CRCF Mahan.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Well, perfect, friends. Thank you so much. Love you lots.
Okay, bless you all. Excellent.
We want to thank you for joining us on Recalibrate today. For more information, please check out our website at crcfchurch.com.
Let your kingdom come, let your will